some water before we come on here.
All right. Well, hello again to all the boys and girls out there in YouTube land watching. John and Ellie of Georgia Beer Reviews back at you this Saturday afternoon with a special kind of spur of the moment live stream. We're doing Imperial Stout Saturday, and I'm being joined by Mr. Michael Kormaroff in Brooklyn.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Michael. And we've got some stouts to show you guys. Michael, I'll let you lead off. What are you drinking?
Let me catch my breath. Okay. This is from 6 Point, and it's their Cojito Cowboy, which is a rum barrel-aged beer. And this one goes back to late 2000 in December when it was canned. So it's got like almost 3.5 years on it. 15.4% rum barrel with coconut, cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla. So that's mine. Do you want me to pour it?
Yeah.
Or do you want to describe yours first?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just go through mine really quick, and then we'll both pour them up at the same time here. So I've got from Pojala. They are an Estonian brewery. This is the Cocoa Banger. It is an Imperial Stout with coffee and coconut added, and it's 12.5% alcohol by volume. They brew it with coconut and Costa Rican coffee. So I've had some of the Pojala beers before, some of the barrel-aged stuff, but this is just a straight Imperial Stout with the coffee and coconut. I mean, 12.5%, that's getting up there for a standard non-barrel-aged stout. Never had it. Really excited to try it. And this one, the date on it is actually, I saw it earlier. It's printed on, so it's hard to see. But it's like 8 months old, I believe. So it's not got a lot of age to it. But yours is from when, Michael? It's 2020 or
the 11th of December 2020. So it's more than 3 years already.
So yours has got a lot more age than mine does. Okay, so those are the beers we're drinking. We're going to go ahead and
I also noticed, John, yours is 11.2 ounce bottle, as all the Europeans are. So you lose that 0.8 in the translation, but that's reality driven more than anything else.
Right. I'm not too upset by that. It is a 12.5% or so.
I'm sure it'll pack its punch.
Right. All right.
I'm using a different glass here too, with a wider thing so the beer can breathe a little bit. Well, carbonation doesn't look like an issue at the beginning, but it's funny with these high alcohol beers. What happens a lot is after the pour, you notice I have, what would you guess that to be, a half a finger head?
Yeah, had more than mine. Yeah, mine's like a
but it's in the process of fast fading. So I don't know how long it's going to. Actually, I think I'm going to pour the rest in here. There's a little bit left in the can. I think when I lift it again, it'll all be gone. So, I mean, it's one of, you've had these before on the high alcohol ones. The head's there and then it's not. So it's
you're lucky, like you could see yours and mine both have kind of a thin film on the top with some, some bubbles if you kind of tilt the glass. So you could tell that it's got a decent amount of carbonation for a higher alcohol beer, at least in mine. I don't know if you see the bubbles on yours, but as I tilt the glass up, even though the head is mostly gone, it's got that thin film that remains, and there's a lot of charge to it, a lot of little bubbles that rise to the top every time I tilt the glass. So it's not for lack of carbonation that the head dies down so quickly. It's these super high alcohol beers just have a hard time retaining. Do
you remember the price point of yours?
So this bottle, I've had this in the fridge for a while, but typically these beers go for about $10, $11 a bottle.
Which imported raises the price, it seems,
right,
and all that stuff. I remember, I got this for $6.50 a can, but I had to buy 12 to get that price. In other words, to get it for $6.50, it would have been $8 a can if I just wanted a single. So I bought 12 cans and got $1.50 off each one, and that's why I have so many. And this was during the pandemic, So what 6 Point did is they gave you, a third, like 33% off if you willing to make a larger purchase kind of thing, which I don't know, felt I was supporting my local brewery. So I was willing to do it. And that's it. Like I said, I still have 8 of each left. So I've only had 4 of each. This is the 4th one I'm having now. But maybe it's exciting to share it with you.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a round 2 of the Coquito Cowboy at some point, since the first time I tried it.
It sounds good. I guess, and this now, pre anything new that you've never done before, I guess you'd really kind of want to not spend time, doing advanced stuff, I guess, kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to say cheers to Bart Robinson in the chat. Good afternoon to you. And Josh is also in the chat. Last beer. Cheers to you guys. And Josh says literally drank the 2023 earlier this month. I wonder. Oh, he's talking about he bought Parabola from Firestone Walker, the 2024, and then he had the 2023 earlier this month. Yeah, the Firestone Walker stuff is really good, Josh. I've had a few of their beers, but we don't get a ton of their stuff around here.
I've been looking. I've been looking, and I haven't seen it. The co-op sometimes does have it. I haven't seen it. I can ask. You can request stuff. Maybe she can find it.
Yeah. So I'm already getting a lot of aromas off of mine. As soon as I poured it, that coconut was really banging, which is probably why they call it the cocoa banger. I'm not getting a ton of coffee on the nose, but you know how I am about these coconut beers. If you say there's coconut in it and I'm not getting a big whiff of coconut on the nose and not tasting it, I'm going to dock it some serious points. So it's looking promising based off of the notes I'm getting on the nose so far. What are you picking up on yours?
Okay.
Both of these, by the way, by coincidence, we didn't plan this, but both of these have coconut in them. Both of these.
Okay,
beers.
I'm getting the bourbon barrel thing as my lead nose, but I'm getting some coconut in the background too. I'm not getting any vanilla. Is kind of a weird one because you can't really smell it.
It just
maybe
comes
on
off
a straight vanilla one you could
like
if it was the main taste. I'm getting some spice too. I can't separate out cinnamon, which is in this, but there is a spicy kind of thing to it as well in the background. Maybe I'm getting a little bit of oak from the barrel in the nose as well.
Nice. Now yours is interesting. You mentioned bourbon. It's not aged in bourbon barrels. Correct?
It's actually in rum barrels, but I'm getting
barrel.
kind of a bourbon kind of nose. Now the taste might be different. I'm not getting any sweetness in my nose that I can really do, because rum barrels are usually sweeter than bourbon.
Right. And the char is different. Like rum barrels, I don't believe you get the char that you get with the bourbon barrels. So it's maybe a little bit lighter on the palate than a bourbon would be, because you don't get all that super charred oak character that you get from a lot of the bourbon barrels.
So the nose I guess I'm getting is like a general kind of spirit thing that could be across the board, rum or some other spirit. I'm not getting you from the nose. I couldn't tell you that this was rum. Now the taste may be completely different. I might get it in the taste where it's going to be sweeter than but even the bourbon stuff sometimes is very sweet. Thinking of Bourbon County, some of the Bourbon County stuff can have sweetness to it.
Oh yeah. One interesting thing about the Pojala here is that the coconut is really the lead aroma. Sometimes, you get coffee in your stouts, and coffee is the predominant aroma and tasting notes that you get are from the coffee. I'm only getting the coconut on the nose, and maybe like a little bit of like a.
Are you getting any of the malts or, any of the barley?
I was going to say maybe a touch of like a milk chocolate, not necessarily dark chocolate, but like a sweet milk chocolate. It kind of smells a lot like an Almond Joy, or actually more of like a Mounds, I guess, candy bar. Very sweet coconut.
But again, that's
forward.
Also coconut. So that means the coconut is even tied in with the chocolate. So that's in mine, the coconut is there, but it's more like a background kind of smell. It's not. And the barreling, and like I said, I'm going to put it in mine spirit barrel. distinct in the smell. I've done enough of these barrel aged beers that some are more obvious what it is to begin with. I mean, I know for a fact it's rum barrel, but it's not obviously a rum barrel thing.
Right.
But you notice now there's no head, no.
Pretty
mine's
much
like yours. I have the rim. The rim is still showing, but it faded away. All right, so I'm going to say in mine, background coconut. And
so my coconut's at the front. Yours is kind of taking a back seat. That's interesting. I am
now mine might be more in the taste. Maybe the taste of mine will be.
I'm getting
to the point where I want to taste it. So
I want to taste.
I'm
salivating here. This thing smells amazing.
Cheers.
So let's do it. Cheers. Good Lord.
Wow.
That's good stuff. A little bit of coffee.
I can taste the rum now.
You can taste the rum.
I mean, it just goes to show you that the taste and the nose can be different because the nose may not be pronounced enough in what it is.
Well, so like you mentioned, the sweeter notes. A lot of times you get them on the palate. It's hard to detect like a sweetness on the nose. A lot of times with vanilla, oak, like rum, for instance, the barrel, you get that more on the palate. So you are getting the rum. I'm
getting the rum, and it's definitely sweeter than your typical bourbon barrel aged ones that we've done. It's interesting because it's like you're getting a combo taste between all the other things that are added to this. So I'm getting the coconut with the cinnamon.
And what else is in there?
Nutmeg and vanilla. I'm not getting nutmeg.
Cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla.
I'm not getting specific nutmeg. I'm getting spice. So maybe that's the nutmeg I'm getting. And now it's also in the background, but there may be some vanilla sweetness as well that's tied in. But what's nice about this one, the sweetness is not cloying, because we have this cloying level sometimes on some of these beers where they're so sweet. After a while, when they start warming up, you can't take them anymore because, the sweetness. Jay does it with sugar cubes, 4 out of 5 sugar cubes. This, I think, is like 3 sugar cubes. So it's sweeter. I'm not getting any bitterness in this at all. It's sweetness, but it's not cloying sweetness. It's and you can taste the alcohol. So this you would call this boozy.
So the coffee with mine is coming through a little bit on the palate. I wasn't picking it up at all in the nose. It's so minute, though. It's so minimal. I think if the coffee wasn't in this beer, it would be too sweet. I think the only purpose that the coffee serves in this is to balance out the sweetness that I'm getting from the coconut. And there's a lot of kind of like vanilla vibes with it as well. But there's nothing in it other than Costa Rican coffee and coconut. So that's interesting that it's as sweet as it is, because there's no added vanilla or anything else that would make it that sweet. So the way that they brewed it, being a higher ABV beer like this, you're probably a lot of the sweetness would be coming from the malts, the way that they brew it.
Now, this particular Cojito Cowboy does not have a carbonation issue, where I think I've told you some of the Black is Beautiful have seemed to be lower carbonation. And those are newer. Those are 3 months newer than this. Those are from early 21. But again, in any individual can that you brew, who knows? I mean, they have the equal care up to 6 point when it was delivered. But maybe when the can is sealed, a little air gets in, and that makes a difference that you can't store it as long. I don't know. And we
were talking about this before we went live, but for all the viewers out there, based on your experience, can versus bottle and cellaring beers, which you have cellared quite a few beers, your experience is that the cans typically don't hold up as well as the bottles?
Yes, but again, it's not like I've had mass experience. I've had some experience. I'm sitting on some stuff that's 2016 now that I from Brooklyn. You know, what's Brooklyn's famous beer that has champagne?
Oh, the Black Ops, I believe. Yeah.
Right, the Black Ops. So I have 2 bottles from 2016. I also have a can from the newer variety with the what's it? Black Rose. What's the famous whiskey?
Oh, the Four Roses.
Four Roses.
Yeah.
Four Roses. So I have 1 can of that as well, and the 2 bottles. And we talked about possibly having an examination where you could bring any
year
things.
Black Ops.
Ian when he gets back from his trip.
Right. Yeah, that's something to look forward to. The search has begun. There's a lot of really good craft beer stores that sell cellared beer, older beers. So I think I should be able to find a couple different variations of the Black Ops. But that's one of the ones, too, we were talking about. They're switching from the bottles to cans. Is that right?
Right. So the ones with the Four Roses are in 16-ounce cans.
Are in cans now, which
the
is
other ones were in. The other ones were in. The other ones were in 25.4 ounce. The big ones with the champagne top. So not because we have the regular bomber bottles with a regular cap that are 22 ounces as well. Are you aware that the company that makes Saranac Utica Club has acquired Flying Dog?
No, I did not know that.
So they now and. You know, that they're a big company. Utica Club's an old one. They're not as old as Yuengling, but they're from the late 1800s, I think, or early 1900s. They've been around a really long time. Yuengling is the oldest, I think, at 1829 is the oldest brewery in the United States. And obviously, they haven't been always making beer because during Prohibition, they had to make soda and other things just to stay in business because otherwise, you know, you couldn't make beer during that period. So you had to make, I think they made ice cream as well. So they had a whole bunch of well-rounded things that they were doing. 6 Point, though, in local news here, has opened another tap room in Lower Manhattan in the Wall Street area now, too. And one of my friends who was at the tasting was telling me about it. He just feels that they will probably do most of their business on the weekend because when stock market's closed and people aren't around, they don't have a big area to draw on unless people are willing to take the subway there. It's in Lower Manhattan, not far from where the World Trade Center is. So,
okay.
And he said the space was nice, you know, big high ceilings. And
so they've got how many locations now with that one?
Well, they have the main place where they started in Red Hook, but 2 brew pubs, one in downtown Brooklyn and one in Lower Manhattan.
Okay, so 3 overall locations.
But they're not doing anything at the one in Red Hook right now other than maybe specialty things, as far as I know. That's where you used to go when they only had 1 location where they did the tours and all the other stuff that went on. They brewed locally, but then when they started canning, they couldn't keep the capacity. So they canned in different locations in Pennsylvania, I think, and in Tennessee. And now they're in that conglomerate I told you about, with Southern Tier and Victory, owned by these investment bankers who are tied in with their system. And at all these things, the other ones do have a couple of things on tap from the other 2, from Victory and Southern Tier, even though most of the tap selections are from 6 Point.
Which is cool, too, that the you know, you have the trifecta there, you know, 3 really good breweries. And the location, you sent me a couple of pictures before. You've gone to the Brooklyn location and you can try all 3 breweries they have all of their beers on tap at one location, which seems pretty cool. Yeah.
But it's much more 6 Point oriented. So the other ones just have a few things, but they do at least give you some exposure. And in their store, you can buy other things from all 3 breweries if you want to take beer home with you, which is another thing. And they serve food there too. So if you want to eat while you're there, and I'm in a club where you can get free appetizers depending on how much you spend and whatever. Are you noticing any difference as it's warming, even though mine's still cold?
So, yeah, mine's still cold. I've been kind of, you know, putting my hands on the glass, letting it warm up a little bit. It's a little bit more astringency is coming through. But, you know, the aroma was all coconut, no coffee. on the palate, I'm getting a little bit of that coffee, and as it warms, it's becoming a little bit more bitter. And I think it's mostly from the coffee, probably some from the roasted malt, the astringency of the dark roasted malt that's in there, but it's still primarily coconut. A little bit more bitterness coming through as it warms. It's not boozy at all. Mine is not boozy at all. It's slightly sweet. We were talking about, J. Terrio and the sugar cubes. I would probably go 3 out of 5 sugar cubes, 4 initially, but then as the bitterness kind of comes into play a little bit more from the coffee as you continue to sip, and as the beer warms, I would drop it down to 3 because it's a little bit more balanced with that coffee. Like I said, if there wasn't coffee in this, I think it would probably be a little bit cloying. I think the coffee is just enough to balance out the initial sweetness, and it's really a nicely balanced beer with no alcohol burn, no boozy characteristics, no barrel characteristics either because it's not barrel aged. That's really me being a big barrel aged stout lover. I think that if they took this Cocoa Banger and they did a barrel aged version of it, I think the sky's the limit for this beer. But this is, as far as a straight, stout, Imperial Stout is concerned, non-barrel aged, this is really getting up there. It's really well balanced. The carbonation is, for a stout, I would say it's probably on the medium side. It does have a good bit of, that prickly carbonation that hits the tip of the tongue as you start drinking it down. And it's really, really enjoyable. It's not, with the coconut in there too and the coffee, sometimes you get these heavy hitting non-barrel aged stouts with these different additives, and you get like a really thick, syrupy motor oil type clingy mouthfeel where it sticks to the inside of your cheeks and it's lingering in an unpleasant way. This one is thin enough to where, it's still got, I would still say it's full bodied, but it's not sticky. It doesn't cling to the palate, and it doesn't linger in an unpleasant way. It finishes very, very nicely, and then it drops off after a few seconds. So it's a little bit more inviting because it's not lingering. You want to go back in for another sip that much more quickly, which for a 12.5% beer could be a dangerous thing because it's
sure.
But yeah,
mine as really it's warming, John, as mine's warming, the coconut is becoming more of a taste where it's exited the background.
Yeah,
Elbow 88 is there.
We definitely agree they need to bring back the Master Blend Stout.
I agree with that too.
I don't know why they stopped doing that. If it was, I don't know if COVID had something to do with that and the way that they. Do you know the story behind the Master Blend? Why they stopped that?
I have no idea. I know it was very successful, and I got to drink some of it. And you got one. You got the Jameson one. That was a Master Blend.
I got 2. I think you sent me one.
Yeah, maybe there were 2.
And then Bumpy sent me one as well from Georgia. So you sent me one and Bumpy sent me one. So I had 2 different.
So you got to taste 2.
Versions.
Because it doesn't seem like that's the base beer for these, although I don't know. They could be the base beer for the Cojito Cowboy in the Black is Beautiful. I don't know.
I don't know
if it is or not. I have no idea. That was all done at 6 Point when they were in Red Hook, Brooklyn. All the stuff with the Master Blend and the different derivatives that they had and whatever. It seems, if there's only one negative thing that I can say from them being taken over by people investing, they seem to be pushing their basic line harder. I'm not saying they'll never come up with anything,
like the IPAs, you mean?
In other words, it seems like they want their baseline to pick up, and they want to get more distribution in the base beers that they have. And they know that they brew a quality beer. They want to get, mass buying of the stuff, like the stuff you got in Georgia before you left. You saw some of their IPAs, which is what they were featuring.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, because that was really, I think the resin, which is like a West Coast 100 plus IBU, really bitter, piney beer. If I'm not mistaken, that was kind of the beer that put them on the map. the resin, the original.
That was
West Coast
one of the 5 beers that they were pushing, and they had a
which is interesting.
Pilsner.
Yeah, because they only went to the juicy New England style IPAs later on, when that became more of a craze.
They were trying to compete with all the ones that were coming out from the Tree Houses and Trilliums and other half, and they knew since they were mass market, theirs would be different, but they try to compete and make them as close as they could.
Right. Yeah, Josh says that resin is a good staple. I agree. It's kind of like, for me, the resin, not that I'm a huge fan of it, but that's just because I'm not a huge West Coast IPA kind of guy. I like the New England juice bombs better, but for what it is, that's an excellent Westy IPA. I would put that right up there with like the Lagunitas IPA, which I think is another one that's really top tier, traditional West Coast IPAs.
Josh is saying that Miscellaneous bought a bunch of the Sam Adams Utopias.
Well, he bought a bond. Well, one that I don't know. I saw he posted a picture on Beer Chat, Beer Talk, or Wankers, in one of the chat groups the other day, and I remember the box that he was holding up. I saw the picture that he posted. It said illegal in 15 states, which is an interesting marketing campaign. It kind of
guess what one of your states is where you used to live.
Oh, Georgia and Alabama and Georgia.
And I think Mississippi too.
Yeah, all the southern states, other than Florida, because Florida's a lot more free with their alcohol laws.
North Carolina also you can get higher alcohol beers in North Carolina too.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know about South Carolina. Now Alabama, what can you get? 14 in Alabama?
I think 12 is the limit in Alabama.
Mississippi is 10.
14 was Georgia. Of the alcohol limiting law states, I would say Georgia was the best because their limit was the higher end at 14%. Alabama and Mississippi and even Tennessee, I think Tennessee is 10 as well. They're a little bit lower. So if you're going to live in one of the southern states and you're a big craft beer person and you want higher ABV barrel-aged beers and a chance to maybe get a Bourbon County every now and then, I think Georgia is probably your best bet.
Right. And it's funny, New York gets put in with Louisiana because Louisiana has no regulation at all. You can get any amount. And Massachusetts doesn't have a regulation either.
No. Massachusetts is a lot more liberal just in general. You can you can go to a dispensary up here and buy cannabis if you like.
No, you can in New York as well.
So New York, so the laws are very liberal with alcohol, and then of course other things like cannabis is legal here.
Can Bumpy get stuff in New Hampshire? Is that at a high rate as well, or not?
Alcohol, yes. Alcohol, yes.
Marijuana, Marijuana's not been okayed for.
There's no dispensaries in New Hampshire, but it's funny because people just cross over the state line.
You go into Massachusetts and you buy it,
whatever. So it's really, the state laws are really it's really stupid, especially if you live right on like I'm 15 minutes away from New Hampshire. I can be in Nashua at Spyglass, right, in 15, 20 minutes. And it's over on the New Hampshire side. So I can do that, but yeah, I can't buy cannabis. Not saying, I would do that one way or the other. I just think it's interesting.
Every state has its own laws and whatever. We're close to New Jersey, which has similar marijuana laws and no beer restrictions either. Bart Robinson, I'm not sure if he's still on. He was on before. He's in southern New Jersey, for instance.
Yeah, FLX. Cheers. Well, FLX is actually in New York, I believe, right? I think he's actually not too far from you, if I'm not mistaken.
Is he in the city somewhere? I don't know where FLX. I don't know who he is.
Well, he just said New York cannabis is. So yeah, he's in New York somewhere. I don't know how close he is to Brooklyn, but he's not. I don't think he's too far from you.
Did I tell you when Jean-Pierre comes up on his next trip, he's promised to come and visit me?
Oh, that'll be cool. So there's
what he's promising. He's promising that now. He went to visit our pal in southern New Jersey, I guess.
Bart. Bart is in. Yeah, you were talking about Bart. Bart is in New Jersey.
He's in New Jersey, so he knows
yes.
what the beer laws are there. So,
and Dan FLX is Rochester.
He's upstate.
New York.
He's
So,
5 hours from me in upstate New York, which is
okay.
Same state laws on the beer and cannabis. Both things are.
But New Jersey has strict laws when it comes to pumping your gas. They don't allow it.
Yeah, they don't allow any individual person other than the guy from the station to pump.
I really don't understand that law. If somebody could explain that to me, is it just for job creation?
Well, it is more It's more jobs, I guess, would be the reason, because that means when you come to one of those stations, they have to physically have somebody there help you. Where if it's self-service, the person can stay inside selling you chips and beers and all the other stuff. Right. I guess.
Yeah,
that's about it. Are you getting anything else? Take another sip of your Pohala.
So, oh man, I'll tell you, the aroma is just. I wish I could create an air freshener from this beer. So the coconut is still star of the show. It's funny, that sip I didn't feel like it was as bitter. It's almost like initially it's really sweet. The coffee kind of, your palate picks up on that in the next few sips, and it seems like it's a little bit more bitter. And then somewhere along the line, the tongue just kind of gets numb to it, and then the coconut comes back and takes the lead again. So for somebody like me who's a coconut freak, who loves coconut in his stouts, this is an absolute dynamite of a beer because it's so coconut forward. Other flavors I haven't mentioned that are there, but they're kind of in the background are dark chocolate and like dark toast, like toasted bread, but primarily coconut. Just a hint of that coffee to balance it out. But if you like coconut and chocolate, you're gonna love this because that's it. That's primarily what you're getting. The fact that it's not barrel aged, you're not getting a ton of other stuff like complex barrel notes or anything like that. But for some people, this is kind of what they're looking for. They want specific flavors, and that's it. They don't want to sit there and sip on a beer for an hour to pick out 50 different tasting notes. Some people just like the straight stouts like this, and there's a place for them, and this is absolutely beautiful. I have no complaints. It's really hitting all the high points, and I can't right now. I can't say anything negative about it other than I wish it was barrel aged. But that's not a negative.
But at this point, you can't have that. So you have to be fair to the beer.
I could open up this new bottle of
Knob Creek and add some
9-year bourbon and
more seemingly barrel aged,
right?
But it's funny. Now I can't say this is going to be a revelation. I took a few more sips, and I don't have enough experience with rum barrel aged to say this, but it's almost like with the rum barrel aged, you're not getting the oak. In other words, when you have bourbon barrel aged, sometimes you get that kind of oaky thing from the barrel. You're not getting that with the rum barrel. I don't know why that would be. Maybe there's a difference in the barrel itself, in a rum barrel versus a bourbon barrel.
I think they use the same oak. I think it's the same barrels, but they don't char them like they do with the bourbon. It's not a charred oak barrel.
Okay,
or if it is, it's not to the extent that they char the bourbon barrel.
So I'm not getting any of the char at all. I'm not getting any of the oak at all. I'm getting more sweetness. But like I said, I guess yours is balanced with coffee. Mine is balanced with the spices.
What about molasses? A lot of rums, you pick up like a sweet molasses or maple syrup, even like a sweet note like that. Anything like that?
Not specifically, but maybe there is kind of a little bit of molasses in this as well. I guess certainly background stuff there is.
Have you noticed as the beer warms, the nutmeg, which is a very spicy type of flavor, has that come through a little bit more? I find that nutmeg in beers, as beers warm, that spice note kind of comes through sometimes.
It's funny. I've gotten more of the vanilla than I've gotten of the nutmeg, but I can taste spice though. So the nutmeg is probably there. And again, we're going to be here for a little bit longer, maybe as it warms more. What I did was after the last time you texted me and said 20 minutes out, I got the can and I brought it out. So it wasn't fully cold, but maybe 20 minutes is not enough where right now it's still colder than room temperature. Maybe as it gets further down and warms, I'll get more. I might get the nutmeg too.
Right. From what I remember of that beer, it was very, very nice, and I really enjoyed the coconut flavors. If anybody's out there that's been subscribed to me for a while, you may remember Michael and I went live with a Coquito Cowboy examination, but it's in the archives, but it's not publicly available for consumption anymore.
I knew there was trouble when Drunken One came on, and he says, I don't know how much further John's going to be able to go. And I said, if he's not doing well, he should probably sleep it out. Because when you think about it, when you get to the point where you're at that spot, you're better off sleeping than you are to continue drinking 15.4%, which you still had to fly the next day.
I was
not a good idea.
Right. I was just more mad at myself than anything. I was fine the next day and everything, but it was the first time that I had never been on a plane before. I was flying up here to meet my now wife for the first time. I mean, there was a lot going on, and I got a little carried away, but I still beat myself up over that, sometimes because I can't get that beer and they don't make it anymore. I kind of missed out on a golden opportunity.
You could have really saved that and had something else that night. We didn't have to do it. I mean, I never forced
I should have done that.
But one good thing, John, now you're a married man, and not long, but still, because I'll have my 42nd anniversary coming up next month. So.
Congratulations!
And my daughter is going to be 35, which is a little younger than you, but next week on March 7th.
Okay. My dad's birthday is March 6th, and my nephew's birthday is March 5th. A lot of March birthdays.
They're all Pisces if you're into the astrological thing.
Yeah.
Nice. Jean-Pierre is a fellow Aquarian like me. I'm February 12th.
Very nice. I will say, I do consider myself pretty high tolerance with alcohol, and I ate a little something earlier, but I'm feeling the alcohol. I'm starting to feel the warming and like kind of warm fuzzy feelings from the alcohol, which is interesting too because this is a straight. Sometimes I find that the straight stuff, the non-barrel aged stuff, it hits you faster than the barrel aged stuff. Like I feel like I can drink a Bourbon County in its entirety and not feel the alcohol. But this at a 12.5%, which is actually less than the Bourbon County, and this is not barrel aged, I'm feeling this more than I would feel a Bourbon County right about now, which is really strange. And it's not like I'm drinking on an empty stomach. It's just an interesting observation, I guess. Same thing with like regular beer and like malt liquor, Malt liquor is just high grain, high alcohol lager beer, and that kind of hits you a little bit differently than even some of the barrel-aged beers. I think Jay said it best. The alcohol delivery system for different types of beer, it seems to be a legitimate thing. I don't know if there's any scientific research that's been done on different types of alcohol and how they affect the body and how they hit you differently. But there's something about this beer, it's kind of creeping up on me a little bit. In a good way, but
It's funny. And we still haven't figured out who the other okay, maybe some of the people who were there would know. There's a brewery that started in Scotland that has a lot of different breweries in Europe, and they have one in Ohio in the United States. So if anybody who is on the chat now knows the name of that brewery, I try to think of one of their beers. They are well known. It's not like it's somebody who's going to surprise you when you hear the name.
And the only Scottish brewery that I could think of offhand was the Innocent Gun, which they're the originators actually of the barrel-aged beer, if I'm not mistaken. They started doing barrel aging back in Scotland, years before it became popular in America. Their
Okay. I
rum
know the
barrel
brew
aged Scottish
is
ale.
somewhere near Columbus. So I went beer companies near Columbus. I don't know if you're going to get enough where it's going to tell me. And maybe it's not in Columbus itself. It may be outside. I don't know. Anyway, it'll come back to me, hopefully. But that's where I did have Pohala before. And it's interesting because at this, I went first, this is on the trip in 2018 that Audrey and I made. So part of the deal that we made, since I have to go to every art museum that we hit, and there was a ton of them. I've never been to that many art museums in such a short time. Wherever we were, I said, well, in the time we're not doing that, we have to either go to breweries. I was willing to drink wine too. When we were in Italy, I drank a lot of wine because the Italian beer is, I mean, you know your types. It's going to be mostly macro, and it's nothing it's wonderful kind of thing. It's okay, whatever. So we had this brewery, which at some point before we're finished, I'm going to figure out what it was called, which had one location in Florence, and we went there twice, 2 different times. And it was really good because they had, besides having their own beer, they had Pohala, and they had some other, lot of European stuff I'd never seen before. So I didn't even drink their beer. I drank the other stuff that was there. And then we went to Rome, and instead of going to the Colosseum, which everybody goes to as tourists, we went up the hill, and there was one there, and we went there one time, and it was really good. And it's I don't know, when you go on these trips, there has to be give and take, because Audrey's into beer, but she's not into beer as a primary thing. It's kind of more like, okay, if that's your thing, I'm going to take part, but it's not something that she loves, where I do love it. I do love it.
So I was looking at Scottish beer companies in Ohio. There's a Barley's Brewing Company and Ohio Brewing Thirsty Dog Brewing Company.
No, it's not that.
This is something that would be that I've heard of before. Correct?
Yes, you've heard of this, and it's weird, and it just shows you. Look, I'm 73, and I'm not using the age as anything, but my ability to think of stuff from the past, you lose a little bit as time, and as you're drinking 15.4%, that kind of dulls your base system to begin with. But there has to be a way to look it up, because let's see, it's in the suburbs of Columbus, though, I think. This company also, maybe this will give a hint that we can figure it out. They try to raise money from people, like from stock. In other words, they're not openly traded or anything. They try to get people to invest in their company, and they gave them side stuff by investing. And I would have done it if I was in Metro Columbus, Ohio, because then on your birthday, you got a free beer and stuff. But I figured in New York, unless I'm in Columbus, Ohio, what benefit am I going to get by supporting them?
It's not great. It's not Grainworks, is it?
No.
Oh, man.
We're going to get it. Don't worry. We're going to figure it out.
It's not Brewdog, is it? No.
It is Brewdog.
Is it Brewdog? Okay. All right, Brewdog.
Good job. Okay, so have you ever had a Brewdog beer?
Yes, but a long time ago. Long time.
Okay, so it was a vehicle for me to try other European beers when I was in Italy, because they had a really good selection. They had that Pohala, they had some other stuff that this Audrey.
Okay. So
just mute me.
Yeah. So while Michael's on the phone there, Brewdog, if I'm not mistaken, at one point had the strongest beer in the world. It was like a 40 or 50% ABV beer. And I know like these breweries are always competing, so you've got another brewery took over, but if I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure it was BrewDog at one point, and I can't think of the name of the beer offhand, but they had the highest ABV beer in the world at one point in time. It's kind of a, I don't know, not a gimmick. I mean, it's obviously a high alcohol beer, but it's probably not very reminiscent of a beer in many ways, because it's so high alcohol. It probably just drank like a liqueur or a spirit. But I can unmute you, Michael.
Calls, you can't just.
I was just saying while you were gone to keep the people.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, I unmuted you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
She wanted to tell me she got safely into Costco, because it's funny. I don't know if do you have a Costco card? Do you shop at Costco?
We got a Costco membership this past Christmas from Caitlin's parents, and I love it. I love Costco.
Okay, what's tough here is the parking lot. When you're in a big section with a lot of people, it's very hard to get in. The parking lot doesn't fit all the people who want to come, so you have to wait until somebody leaves to get a spot. So she texted me about 15 minutes ago. She was in the parking lot, but they weren't parked.
Oh,
and that's why she called me up to tell me now she's parked, so they're going into the store now to shop. But even though you've been married briefly, you understand that when your wife calls, you have to answer just to see that everything's okay.
Yes, I know. Otherwise, you'll never hear the end of it if you don't answer the phone.
Because it'll come up later if you don't, and she'll say,
right.
When time was going on, you cared more about John than me. What's that about? And you don't win. You lose. And that's it. So it's easy, just call, and that's it. What we were talking about, you got BrewDog.
So BrewDog, I was actually saying while you were talking to Audrey that if I'm not mistaken, BrewDog at one point they brewed the highest alcohol beer in the world, and then other breweries came along and outdid them. But there was a beer from BrewDog, I can't think of the name of it offhand, but it was like a 50 or 60% alcohol beer.
Right, but I think now there's something that's even 65%, and they've gone past that.
Right.
See, my problem with those really high alcohol beers is
they're not beers.
When you get to the point you've passed the beer phase of it, it's almost like you're drinking straight spirits.
It's a spirit.
The way it's done. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to buy those Russian beers. You remember the ones? Who's the main Russian beer?
The Rinkuzya beer.
Yeah, and you're going to buy one of those because those are 15% and whatever.
But actually,
isn't there a Russian company too?
Lithuanian is the one I'm thinking of, the Rinkuzya. But the Russian, what's the
one that has number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? This is where I have problems thinking. If you had spoken to me when I was 30, like you are in the 30s, I would have been able to think of it. But as I get older, I can't remember. But I know.
I think it starts with a Z, the brewery. I don't know. God, the number 9, the red label one's the one I've had. It was very popular.
There are some that are okay. They're not all bad.
Oh man, that's gonna drive me nuts.
I'll see if I can find the Russian brewery here.
Everybody's watching. Like, what do you got? You guys are just
looking stuff up. What's going on? But think about it, though. Our beers are still here, and we're going to continue until they get warmer. And
Baltica.
That's
Baltica.
Okay. Sorry. Some of them are okay. They're not all bad. I've had good Baltica.
I like the Baltica number 9. It's kind of like a malt liquor, but it's better than the American stuff because the malt, the grain flavor and the malts that they use in there are, I feel like, higher quality than your cheap American adjunct malt liquors.
I remember having one of them that just tasted like straight alcohol. In other words, what you were doing basically, as Jay used to say, is it was just trying to get you drunk. I don't know what number it was, but it was not a well-balanced beer. It was more like, and it wasn't like it was 15%. It might have been 8%, but they had concentrated it in a way that it seemed like it had more alcohol in it.
Right. Yeah.
When you first came on, I had to change my beer baron. I had to change my beer baron moniker to Stout King since we were doing a stout examination. Because the last time when we did it, I didn't change it. When you did it with Bumpy and Ian, I left it as beer baron, even though that was a stout examination. I just didn't have time to change it.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't even look at mine. Thankfully, it says John.
You're straight, John.
I guess I changed it from the Johnny Bump, or the one that I had when Bumpy was over here. It was so I guess I changed it back. I don't. But anyway,
I still do look at your old videos. By the way, I do when I do even my individual beer tastings that I do by myself. If it's a beer you've done, I watch your video as I do it. Have you had that red tape from Jack's Abbey?
Yeah, I actually. That's
guess what? John, mute me again.
Oh, all right. Yeah, the red tape from Jack's Abbey is it's a really good red lager from them. Of course, Jack's Abbey does. That's what they're known for. They're Jack's Abbey craft lagers. So that's all they brew. And they have a Baltic Porter line. They drink like stouts. They're barrel-aged Baltic Porters. But they are still brewed as lagers because a Baltic Porter is brewed like a lager. It's not an ale. But yeah, Jack's Abbey really makes some incredible lager beers. And the red tape is one of those that I really, really enjoy. It's such a nice, flavorful beer that's light-bodied enough to where you could drink a session. You know, you could do 4 or 5 of them. I think it's like 5.4% alcohol.
It's 5% even.
5%. Yeah, I really like and as a matter of fact, speaking of Jack's Abbey, I usually always have Jack's Abbey in the fridge. Picked up a 4-pack the other day of the post shift.
I can get that.
Bavarian.
I can get that here. I can get that at the co-op.
And then I've got one other one that I've been holding on to for a while. I probably could have used this today, although it's a Baltic Porter. It's the French Toast Framing Hammer, 2023.
I've never seen that one.
I had never seen it either, and it's got lactose and cinnamon in it, 2-row Munich chocolate and roasted barley. Yeah. So, yeah, Jack's Abbey's a good brewery. You know, some of the Framing Hammer ones are among, like, you know, porters and stouts. As far as that's concerned, the barrel-aged arena, the Jack's Abbey barrel-aged Framing Hammers are some of the best barrel-aged beers you can really get around here locally that are local.
Right. How far is Framingham, Mass. from where you are? Do you have any idea geographically how far it is?
Yeah, about half an hour. I've been to the brewery.
Oh, so you've been to the brewery. How is the brewery? Is it a good place to visit?
It's really nice, and they're known for their coal-fired pizza. They're you know, the brick pizza ovens that are, you know, they coal-fire, you know, make pizza there, and they have, like, you know, burgers and tacos, and so they have really good food, really good beer, and they have, you know, Springdale, which is owned by Jack's Abbey,
which is their ale. That's their ale division. Right.
It's right next door. You can walk from the Jack's Abbey side to the Springdale side. It's a separate building, but they're right next to each other, so you can go try all the Jack's Abbey lagers that your heart desires, and then walk over to the Springdale side and try all of their ales and their other beers. So it's a nice place, nice area.
Have you tasted your Pohala lately, and are you getting any new tastes?
Yes, and I'm getting to the bottom here. I'm really struggling. It would be gone if we weren't live right now, because this is really smooth, and it is one of those beers that gets better as it warms, in the sense that the flavors are intensifying, and I'm getting more of the coconut as it warms, and the roasted malt character's coming through more. Dark chocolate and that dark toasted bread, not burnt, but you know when you get a really, really dark piece of toast that's right on the line. It's not burnt, but it's very, very dark. And there's an astringency that comes from that. Not super acrid or bitter, but there's just a little astringent note. And I'm definitely getting that. And I think it's from that roasted malt. As it warms, the roasted character of the malt comes through more. The coffee's about the same, but just enough to kind of balance out the coconut, which I love. The less coffee in a beer like this, the better, because coffee is such a strong flavor note and aromatic that if there was a lot of coffee in here, I feel like it would have masked all the other wonderful flavors that I'm getting, and it would just not be as good. So,
is this the best coconut beer you've ever had?
Oh, no. It's up there, but I've had barrel-aged coconut stouts that are better than this.
Okay,
barrel-aged is always gonna.
It's on a different level. I understand it.
The Jack's Abbey, there was a coconut version of the Framing Hammer. Barrel, it had coconut and something else, and of course it was aged in the bourbon barrel. So actually, no, the Jack's Abbey coconut one was aged in rum barrels, so it was even more sweet. But for a standard coconut stout, a non-barrel aged coconut stout, this may be top 3.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. Now, I have not had that much rum barrel aged stuff. Maybe this could be the 3rd or 4th I've ever had. I would say this is, for me, very top end. I'm going to take another sip. It still hasn't gotten cloying, but as it warms, it's getting sweeter. Now, I guess that is normal because the cold kind of tempers the sweetness, maybe in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like as a beer, a heavier beer like such as what we're drinking, as it warms up, the sweetness comes through more. That's why for example, malt liquor. Everybody says drink a cheap malt liquor ice cold, because as it warms up, it becomes cloyingly sweet and disgusting. So I think the same is true of beers like this. However, they don't get cloyingly sweet and disgusting because they're on a whole nother level. But the same principle is true, that as a beer warms up, the sweet grain and malty flavors tend to come out a lot more in general.
I'm still getting the coconut. I'm still getting the booziness of the beer itself. And as you see, that's all that's left of mine. And mine was 16 ounces, John.
Yes, you're actually
I'm a little further ahead in terms of volume, but that's okay. That's okay. Look, I keep this. It's funny. The day that we had that beer tasting on Thursday, and when we did 21, I canceled the one that had no alcohol in it because that didn't have any effect on it. Of the 20 that we had, I would say the average of the ABV around 10. And I'm figuring that because the highest ABV stuff there was something that was 15 and a half, 16. There was one that was 16.
Oh, wow.
And that's got to bring it up. There were a lot that were in the 8.6. There was some 10s and whatever. Maybe less than 10, maybe 9. But the alcohol was high. And, you're getting individual pours from different people. And maybe you're not getting exactly the same amount. Audrey drinks very little. She just gets. Audrey, FaceTime video. Okay, I'll be back.
There's a lot of exciting things going on at Costco today, folks. So get your Costco membership out, get it ready to go. Hit up Costco. Get you $1.99 or $1.75 hot dog, foot-long hot dog and drink special. One of the many perks of being a member. Yeah. So the Pohala here, folks. Cocoa Banger. Really, really dynamite stuff for just a straight non-barrel aged Imperial Stout. If you like coconut, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. And if you're not a huge coffee fan, I think you'll be pleased with this because although there is coffee in it, it is very well balanced, and the coconut is still the star of the show. And as the beer warms, the coffee stays consistent. It's not increasing in bitterness or coffee flavors, but the coconut and the sweetness has kind of increased a little bit. So for me, that's probably the biggest plus with this beer is that the coffee has remained steadfast. It has not increased in intensity at all with the warming of the beer.
So you're finding the coffee to be a positive element, and it took care of balancing the sweetness.
It balanced out the sweetness, and as the beer warms, it's not. Sometimes coffee will actually get stronger. Coffee flavors will increase as the beer warms, but with this particular one, the coffee has stayed relatively low throughout, just enough to kind of balance it out. And the coconut and the other flavors, the dark chocolate, a little bit of milk chocolate with this one too, those flavors kind of come through more as well as the beer warms, but the coffee's not masking any of those flavors, which is really nice.
I'm going to take another sip.
Okay. I'm almost done with mine. Not that we're in any hurry, but I think I'm ready to give mine a rating. Now, keep in mind that bourbon, barrel aged, barrel aged in general is always going to get a much higher rating, just because you can't compete with the complexity of a world class barrel aged stout, regardless of how good a standard stout is. It just cannot compete. It's on a different level. So for a standard Imperial stout with coconut and coffee, this is probably world class overall in that category. But I'm looking at it, the bigger picture, and just like stouts in general, right? And I'm going to give it a 96. It's excellent. It's definitely a solid A. Solid A, right down the middle would be 95. It's above a 95. It's got a lot more going for it, but world class would be 98, 99, 100.
So you think John, you think if it was barrel aged, you could expect it to be 98 or 99?
I think if this was barrel aged, I think it would easily be a 98, probably a 99. I think it's just got so much going on for it. A little bit of barrel aging would have really taken it to the next level with the complexity. And you get vanilla and oak from bourbon barrel aging. I think that combined with the already really nice coconut flavors that are in this beer, I think it would have set it over the top. It would have been very Bourbon County-esque in a lot of ways if it was barrel aged. But it doesn't take away from the beer. 96, that's a very solid A rating. I would highly recommend it. The alcohol's masked well. The flavors that you want in this beer are there. The coconut does not disappoint. That seems to be the case in a lot of these so-called coconut stouts and porters. They promote the coconut and talk about it on the label, and then you get to drinking it, and it's a letdown. This definitely does not let you down in the coconut department, and that's huge. So, yeah, 96 all day for the Pojala Cocoa Banger. Awesome stuff. Would highly recommend it for anybody that likes.
John has drifted. John, you're back.
Yeah, anybody that likes coconut and chocolate, I would highly recommend. And yeah, that's what I would say.
John, I have to leave you.
Okay. But they actually this brewery, the Pojala, they have a lot of barrel aged beers. I ought to check and see if I can find a barrel aged version of this. But I've had port wine barrel aged, bourbon barrel aged, a couple other barrel aged beers from this brewery, and they were world class. So they make incredible stuff, and this is no exception.
Hello, John.
Hello. So I was
I'm consulted on all the executive decisions on what chicken to get and stuff like that, which I think is cool because she asked me what's in the freezer, which I guess is all right. I do a lot of, it's funny. I do stuff where I make stuff in the crock pot. Do you have a crock pot?
Yeah, we do crock pot stuff a lot.
Okay, so I'll do stuff where she'll buy chicken and you take like 1.5 pounds of chicken and you throw in beans and you make kind of like a concoction thing with you throw in 1 pound of crushed tomatoes and then the vegetables, and it's like having like a stew, kind of stewed chicken, which gives you a couple of days of meals, which works out well. And so she asked me what we had in the freezer and whether she should get it. And Costco, one good thing, Audrey buys stuff that's organic. He's into organic, which is more expensive, but she feels it's better, whatever. And, I'm at the point where I pick my spots. If that's what she wants, we can afford it and everything will be fine.
Right.
So she buys organic chicken and that's cool. And she buys organic vegetables at the food co-op. So it all averages out. So that's what all these calls, and she's asking me what's in the freezer. I know we have one, but maybe that's the last one. So she's buying another 3-pack. So that's what's going on at Costco now.
All right. Well, Michael, it looks like you are down to your last sip.
I'm ready with my number. I'm my number.
Curious. I want to know what you're thinking there for a rating.
Okay, mine is barrel aged. And it's definitely top notch. And whether this has, it certainly has one positive thing going for it, in that they have also, like yours, been able to balance the sweetness with the spices. So the coconut is probably the lead taste after the rum. The rum sweetness is what you get first. Then you get the coconut. Then you get the spices, but it's done in a way where it never gets cloying, which makes this really a well-balanced bourbon, or not bourbon, but rum barrel-aged stout. And I'm going to give it a 98, which is the second highest grade that I can give. That's me personally. I don't give hundreds, so this is.
Would you say I know, like for me, 98, 99, and 100 are world class. Does 98 fall into world class for you, or?
Guess what? One more interruption.
Okay. That's an excellent rating. And he's had this beer before. I think he said he's got 7 or 8 more. So as the beer continues to age, my question when he gets back would be, do you think that it's improving or staying about the same or declining in quality the more age as the beer ages? So Michael, a 98 for you, Michael.
Is back here.
I was asking if a 98 for you.
Yes. Now the problem was whether I wanted whipped cream there, and it was heavy cream.
Okay. All right.
You're drifting.
Okay. Sorry. I sometimes the connection out in the man cave is.
You are back now. I assume that's your. Is that your service? Is that your service? Why you drifted?
Oh, sorry.
John
no,
is
I'm
gone.
back. I guess I'm out. I'm out in the shed, and it's raining outside. It's overcast. Like it could just be.
It's raining. It's raining here too.
It could just be that. I could have done this in the house since nobody's here. I don't know why I'm out here. Honestly, I should have just done it in the house.
Because you like being in your man cave.
Yeah, but so now that I'm back, I was asking if a 98 for you, does that fall into the world class range, or is it just below?
It's just below, and I can't think of anything I'd rather they do. But maybe there's a little bit in the carbonation that it could be a little bit better, and that could be time. In other words, the fact that it's been in the can 3 years plus, that might have affected the carbonation a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if I would ever have given it a 99. That's not a guaranteed thing.
How about the flavor overall, though? Because you've had it fresh, and now you've had it with a few years age on it. Do you notice a difference in the flavor as it gets older?
No, the flavor has held up. If anything, there's a minor decline in the carbonation, and that could be in the issue we're discussing, that bottles might hold up longer than cans. And this is something else to bring up. And I know you've had this and you've done this. The ones you get, which have those little like wax, which they put over the bottle. In other words, like you have to take off a whole wax section to do it.
Right.
That might be the way to ultimately do it in the safest way, because in bottles too, they're going to lose something through the cap. If you put that wax on the cap, maybe that holds in the carbonation.
It really
better.
Seals it in there pretty good, you know.
Whatever. But I have to be honest. In cans, there've been a few of these Black is Beautiful ones that I've done from 6 Point, which I thought even suffered. I do stuff, where you do your ratings, and it's almost like you can't say it's dropped a full point, but even if it's dropped a half a point to a point where the carbonation is good, maybe bottles in the long run would be better. But it's not like 6 Point's going to start bottling everything. So this has to be because you're in your man cave, because it's like minor drift where you're drifting in and out.
Okay.
So I guess if I had to choose between bottles and cans, I would say bottles are probably better, but it's not enough better that I'd stop buying cans. In other words, I would still buy barrel-aged stuff in cans, and that wouldn't stop me. But I think bottles probably hold the carbonation better.
Right.
And that's not any kind of definitive statement or whatever. It's just how I feel about it. And otherwise, 98's a high rating.
96 for me for a non-barrel aged, 98 for you. I would say we had two winners here. So anybody that may have joined late, Michael was drinking the 6 Point Coquito Cowboy at 15.4%. He gave it a 98 out of 100, which is really excellent. For me, that would be like just into the world class. 98, 99, 100 for me is world class, but an excellent beer from 6 Point, no longer made, unfortunately. So if you want it, you're going to have to either hit up Michael for a can or find a store that sells beers that have been sitting around for a while. And then for my beer, the Pojala Cocoa Banger, 12.5%, non-barrel aged. This is just about as good as it gets for a non-barrel aged Imperial Stout, as far as I'm concerned. And this brewery here, I've reviewed a lot of their beers on my channel. Most of them are barrel aged, and their barrel aged stuff, I would say most of the barrel aged beers I've had from them are in the world class category for me. So they make wonderful beers, wonderful stouts and porters, barrel aged and non-barrel aged alike. Really, really good stuff. So if you see them, definitely check them out. And we've got a new comment from I guess a late joiner here. We've got King of the Dots, says he's definitely in a Bach mood. Oh, Bachs are, it's a good style for this time of year. I like a good Bach. But I think covered.
John, should we go off live?
Yeah, we can wrap this up. We've been going about an hour, almost hour and a quarter here. So let's wrap it up. 2 solid A beers, Imperial Stouts for Michael and I, and I want to thank everybody in the chat, Bart and Josh and Lep and Elbow and FLX and King of the Dots who just joined us. And Bart, yes, have a great evening, everyone. You have a great evening as well, Bart, and everyone in the chat. We appreciate you being here and watching along, hopefully sipping along with us as we drank these wonderful beers. So we'll wrap it up. We'll say that we appreciate you all joining. That'll do it for this live examination, this Imperial Stout Saturday. We plan to be back on here soon. We'll, post that information when the time comes. But it looks like right now we're looking at maybe a Brooklyn Black Ops examination. So look out for that. Hopefully in the next few weeks, if we can do that. And we'll see you all on the next live stream. Next
Thanks
beer
for
review.
joining, everybody.
Thank you for joining, and everybody have a great rest of your weekend or day or whenever it is that you're watching this. And cheers, everybody.
Cheers. I'm done.